Entering the Mayo experience.
That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This for the TUF 28th finale, probably the last season of TUF with the UFC going over to ESPN coming up. Don't know if they're going to continue it, and frankly, me and Cody Saftic, my main man here, probably going to shit on the show a little bit here and say kind of like, think about all the talent that we used to get from this. And there's actually been some other people, Tatiana Suarez, like even in the later years, there's been good people who come through, Tatiana Suarez, and that UFC live season really produced maybe not champions, but like perennial people on the roster, people who are able to win fights and keep their job and do well at
a lot
this
of top
level.
15 guys.
100%. So it's definitely done a lot for the sport, but it feels like it's dragging.
Right. So it's actually really funny you say that. Those early seasons of TUF, no doubt that they gave you contenders. And the later seasons of TUF, not so much. You got guys that couldn't really cut it, whether it be Colton Smith or Andrew Sanchez. I'm actually a big Andrew Sanchez fan, but yeah, come on. You used to win TUF and you were a contender. Not getting a title shot, but you were at least in the mix. Some of these guys now not in the mix. Tatiana Suarez, obviously that's a little bit different. This season of TUF, you really get the impression that there's just no contenders. And if you want to look at, taking a whole heavyweight cast, going out and getting the best heavyweights, well, quite frankly, first of all, not a whole lot of heavyweights. What you end up getting on the regional scene, guys that look good in the regional scene are guys like Rashad Coulter. You're going to put them on a season of TUF? It's weird. Ultimate Fighter Season 10. Just think about that season. That season had Roy Nelson on it, who ended up being a top 5 heavyweight. It had Matt Mitrione on it, who ended up being a top 10 heavyweight. It had Brendan Schaub on it. Even the guys that weren't all that great on that season of The Ultimate Fighter, whether it be James McSweeney or Justin Wren or...
They've made careers for themselves after the fact.
Yeah, all those guys. Now, if you take the worst of the worst, if you take Wes Sims and you take Marcus Jones and you take D'Amico Rogers, those guys are on the season, and you put them on a season now, the worst of the worst of season 10 on a... That's what you get here. That's what you get in this Justin Frazier guy. He's got 2 pro losses. His last loss is to Mike Wessel, who, funny enough, was on season 10 of The Ultimate Fighter. Was terrible on season 10. Yeah. And smashed this guy. Scott Junk is actually a K1 veteran, decent kickboxer. He's on this season of The Ultimate Fighter, and he's fighting Mo Derice. He might knock him out. So what you're getting is really bottom-end talent. And on a card like this, on a weekend that has 2 UFC cards, there's a Bellator card, there's an LFA card, there's a KSW card that already has their lines released. There's just so much going on that I'm not going to say hard to get excited because there's some fun matchups on this. But yeah, when you're talking about The Ultimate Fighter, it has run its course. And I just want to see them maybe get to 30 because it'd be a cool number. But if they would have stopped at 25, which they should have, that would have been cool too because it's definitely dragging on.
Giveaway time. All right, so last week's winner is Mr. Platinum 86. You should have DraftKings money in your account right now. This week, I'm thinking step 1, give the show a like. Step 2, leave your DK handle. Step 3, say your favorite moment in the history of TUF.
Oh, good, good one.
Since we're putting TUF to bed here, since we're taking it out to the pasture and giving it an old shot in the head. Just bring up some of the good times before Old Yeller got sick and had to be put away.
Right. There's what's your favorite moment? What's your favorite moment in TUF history? Sorry to put you on the spot because there's a lot of good moments.
Let me bang, bro.
That's a classic.
That's just more of like the internet meme that came out afterwards with like the Titanic music and yada yada yada. Have you ever seen that?
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
It will live on forever.
Yeah.
I saw an interview the other day with Julian Lane. He's like, yeah, I know that's who I am, and that's will carry you around with me for the rest of my career.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, do all of that good stuff. One thing too is like we're recording this Thursday morning. Obviously, TUF finale or the last episode of TUF happened last night, and there's no DraftKings pricing. There was just odds released for some of these, so we're just gonna run through these from an odds perspective. Feel free to reach out to Cody at CJ Saftic or me at Paul Shag later in the week when pricing gets released to ask us any questions that you may have. Let's get into it. We got Kamaru Usman taking on Rafael dos Anjos. Kamaru Usman is minus 265. Rafael dos Anjos plus 225. What's your take here, Cody?
Well, I think everyone's kind of on the same page, it seems, in that we all love RDA. We all know how good Rafael dos Anjos is, but is he a little bit shop-worn? Can he deal with the physicality of a big, strong, grinding wrestler? And if you're going to just look at you're only as good as your last fight, he dealt not very well against the that pressure and grinding style of Colby Covington. Colby Covington is not the same kind of grinding style as Kamaru Usman, who hasn't looked fantastic his last couple fights. He didn't look great against Damian Maia, I didn't think. He didn't look good against Emil Weber-Meek, I didn't think. So it's not as if this is a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination, but Rafael dos Anjos turned pro in 2014. Lost his debut, actually, split decision, 2014. That's 14 years, of pro experience. Lost to George Brito, the Toronto BJJ head coach, what feels like a lifetime ago, 12 years ago. It's forever ago. He's been fighting forever. And you really get the sense that he hit his peak when he was knocking out Benson Henderson, when he was smoking out Donald Cerrone, when he smoked Anthony Pettis. And then losing to Eddie Alvarez, it's going to take something out of you. Getting knocked out, having a terrible weight cut, it's going to take something out of you. Going up a mile high in the city, in Mexico City, and fighting Tony Ferguson to a grueling 5-rounder, maybe took something out of him. The move to 170 would help out, no doubt. But he didn't look great in his first fight at 170 at Tarek Saffiedine, who's hard to look good against, but just kind of went through the motions. Smoking out Neil Magny, well, that's the style to beat Neil Magny, and you beat him so quickly. I prefer to see dominance for 2 rounds and then a 3rd-round submission, as opposed to a 3.5-minute first-round dusting, and you don't really know what he could have been. But then that fight with Covington, again, it's just a lot of wear and tear to be taking. So now you get Usman, you're going to be the smaller guy again. You're going to have to deal with the wrestling again. You're not going to be able to get comfortable and just move this guy backwards and tee off on him like you like to do, be the aggressor, because he's just not going to give you enough space. Now, the obvious joke here, and I shouldn't even say it because I've heard it too many times already, but I feel like I have to, is Usman's going to have to at least give more than 30%. Because if he's only at 30%, and he seems to only be at 30%, he's going to need more than that to get by RDA. RDA is not shot by any stretch of the imagination, but the UFC is not doing him any favors with this type of matchmaking. And giving him Usman coming off the Covington fight, a similar style, I just don't know how he gets it done. He could get it done in that he's a more experienced guy. He's more dangerous. He's the more potent finisher. He's been 5 hard rounds before. Maybe he could make all that work for him. Mm-hmm. But Usman's not one of these guys that tire. And you and I talk about this all the time. If you're not tiring after 3, you look fresh as a daisy after 3, you could probably go 5.
We've been talking about that with Khabib and with even Covington and stuff. Just like
the same thing.
If they're looking, if they're full steam ahead in round 3, then you have to assume that they're like that in round 4 and round 5. Maybe round 5 is where they start to get tired. But
for sure.
Now, but if you bank 4 rounds, you're up 4 rounds. You could just cruise in round 5. You're good to go.
Yeah. Now if you think about the best that RDA's looked in the last number of last couple fights was the Robbie Lawler fight. But again, it was a grueling fight.
Robbie Lawler is shot-worn.
Robbie Lawler is shop-worn good. So yeah, RDA still got what it takes to go out there and beat those guys. But Covington and Tony Ferguson and Usman, that next generation of guys, you keep in mind, they're fighting a guy that's got 14 years as a pro under his belt. It's been around the block many times. Yes, he's dangerous. Yes, he's all these different things. But similar to Damian Maia, he's still super dangerous, but his time's passed. The younger guys will beat him, and they do beat him. And I get the impression out of RDA the same thing. I don't love the line.
I don't like the price at all.
First of all, we don't have any DK odds, so we're just going to talk about the straight betting line. Yeah. But yeah, 265 on Usman's a little bit disrespectful to RDA. I do think he wins, but I don't love that price. And if he does win, you get the impression it's got to be by decision, because even though 5 rounds is a long time and RDA could be shop-worn, he's not going away lightly. And Usman's not really a finisher to begin with. So I would have to say if you're going to take Usman, take it by decision to at least get the extra points on it.
I hear you. I basically kind of agree with everything there. I have been tempted by Rafael dos Anjos plus 225, but yeah, we just kind of saw that fight, and I don't think Rafael dos Anjos, he did go through a period where he's really evolving and adapting. I don't think we're going to see any major improvements from him moving forward. We're going to see improvements from Usman. We're going to see improvements from a bunch of the other younger guys.
Yeah.
But RDA, he's the finished product right now, and I think Kamaru Usman gets by him, but I think it's a lot closer. I think you could have some seriously close rounds in the mix there.
Yeah. Do you remember when RDA, prime RDA, best I've ever seen him look in his career, probably Anthony Pettis, subsequent fights around that time period, training at Kings MMA, and you'd see pictures of him just shredded. And there was that picture that surfaced before his last fight where he's at that, they call it the RUCA Training Center. I always called it RVCA.
Yeah.
But he's there in California, and it's like When you look at the picture, there's one huge glaring difference. Bring up the pictures on your computer if you're at home right now. One glaring difference. He's a goatee now. No, I'm kidding. He's totally like ballooned up, not in the same shape. I'm not going to say that he was a cheap by no stretch. He's never failed, and
Well,
he's an honorable
he's
guy.
able to carry more fat, right?
Yeah, sure, but what I'm saying is that prime RDA gives Usman all types of trouble. But 170, a little bit older, a little bit damaged RDA, I don't know that he gets the job done. So I'll have to go with the Nigerian Nightmare.
I guess we got KIANZAD taking on something called the Macy CHAISSON in the women's TUF finale.
Yeah, that is correct.
KIANZAD, known from Invicta fame, is minus 165 favorite, taking on CHAISSON, who's plus 125. I've only watched KIANZAD over the years. I didn't watch this season of The Ultimate Fighter. Thank God Cody did. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having a show right now. How bad is this CHAISSON chick? Because let's be like, Penny is like one of those girls in Invicta that like did well. She looked like relatively well-rounded, but you always kind of got the sense it's like, yeah, if you come over to the UFC, you're going to get starched.
Well, the thing with Penny...
But now she's in the UFC and she's a favorite.
Yeah, a favorite to win the Ultimate Fighter. How prestigious is that?
What a great season.
Maybe they should match her up with Tatiana Suarez and have a TUF champion duel it out. Different weight class, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Suarez would
we know who would wreck.
She would stop, drop, and open up shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, the thing with Penny KIANZAD that I was super surprised to hear is that she's 26 years old, which is surprising to me because
she's been around forever.
She is already a busted prospect, and yet shockingly enough, she's only 26. Kind of crazy. This was her record back in the day. She started fighting in 2012, 6 years pro experience, but she beat Lena Landsberg by TKO, who eventually made it to the UFC. She beat Miliana Dudieva, who eventually made it to the UFC. She beat Jessica Rose Clark, who eventually made it to the UFC. She was beating stiff competition on the European regional and then got to Invicta and looked like the shit. Swedish prospect, 7-0, I think. And they match her up with Tanya Evinger. Just too much too soon. She loses to Tanya Evinger. Then her next fight, she takes on Raquel Paloui. She should definitely roll over her, but she doesn't. She gets finished in the third round. And now it's like, I remember that fight.
I remember that fight,
because she couldn't take the heat. She tries to wrestle her opponent. She wants to grapple, and that's why when you look at her record, yeah, she beats Lena Landsberg because she can grapple her. Yeah, she beats Miliana
Raquel's
Dudieva.
Not much, but all she's got is heart.
Yeah, Jessica Rose Clark was the same situation. She just got out-grappled by Penny. But Penny, in no world, is ever going to out-grapple Tanya Evinger, unless it's a Tito versus Chuck situation where you get her when she's 48. But you're not going to out-grapple her, so she loses that fight. Raquel Paloui, she's tough, man. She's a tough Hawaiian girl, brawler, scrapper, wears her down, TKOs her. And then she takes on Sarah Kaufman, ill-advised fight because you just lost your last two. Kaufman's no joke, way bigger than you, way stronger than you. Again, you're not going to take her down. You're not going to stand with her. So that's a 3-fight losing streak. That 3-fight losing streak spans 3 years because she took off a year in between her second and third loss and took off a year and a half in between that first and second loss. So she's not fighting very often, but then this year she resurfaces. She wins 2 fights on the regional scene. She gets on the Ultimate Fighter. It's soft competition. She wins a couple fights on the Ultimate Fighter, and now we have her in the finals. And luckily for her, her opponent, Macy CHAISSON, was like 6-2 as an amateur, but is 2-0 as a pro, has 2 professional fights. Now, Macy CHAISSON finished both of her fights on the Ultimate Fighter by first-round TKO. And over some decent, not great, I'll read them to you. Larissa Pacheco, that was her first round. Larissa Pacheco fought in the UFC. I think she was like 0-2 in the UFC, was super young, was like 21 or something. Didn't look great. Came on the Ultimate Fighter and was supposed to be one of the favorites to win TUF because she had UFC experience. Dusts her in the first round and then takes on Leah Letson. Leah Letson signed a UFC contract to fight Yana Kunitskaya, or what's her name?
Yana Kunitskaya.
Yana Kunitskaya. She signed a contract to fight her, and then that girl ended up getting hurt, and then it was like, okay, here, just take a slot on the Ultimate Fighter. So she just beat 2 class girls in the Ultimate Fighter by first-round TKO. She's strong. She's aggressive. She's got some power. Penny has got the experience. Penny's got the wrestling. But where does Penny struggle? Penny struggles against these strong, aggressive type fighters. So in a fight where both of them are actually inexperienced, and both of them aren't the prettiest, this is dog or pass. I think you got to go with Macy CHAISSON to hurt Penny early, which causes Penny to basically throw her game plan out the window and fold on herself, which we've seen before, and a quick little run on the Ultimate Fighter is not going to change that. When we're going to talk about the heavyweight finals in a second here, they're both terrible. And just because you're in the finals of the Ultimate Fighter, it's not going to change you terrible. Penny KIANZAD is only 26, so I could be wrong here. She's won her last 2 fights on the regional, and then she's gone into the Ultimate Fighter. She's won 2 additional fights. Let's call that a 4-fight winning streak. Only 26, trains at a high level, has a lot of big experience. She's fought Sarah Kaufman. She's fought, you know what I mean? Yeah, maybe she turned the corner and she's getting better. But I'm willing to take that shot at the dog. I would never bet Penny KIANZAD at minus 165. Knowing what I know about her is that I've seen her in situations where it's like, come on, girl, turn that second gear on and you'll win this. And there was no second gear. And so, again, 26, maybe developed it.
She'd have to be taking on, like, Milana Dudieva or something like that.
She won that fight.
Did she already take her on? I forgot about that one. Either way, you understand the point. Is that, like, I'm not laying juice on this girl unless the opponent is egregiously bad.
Yeah, egregiously bad. What I took away from the China card with Lauren Mueller is, at this level, what are you doing, man? What are you doing?
Yep.
She was minus 400. That's extremely laughable.
That was kind of our big swing and the miss on the last card.
Yeah, and to be honest, that was like just an assumption. Like, well, everybody's on her, and she's minus 400, so I won't spend money. But even then, she got armbarred. She dropped her opponent.
We thought she had the grappling
She was winning the first round. She jumped on her white belt opponent who armbarred her from guard. That's the kind of things that happen at this level.
That's what.
So I'm gonna take the underdog here and go with that road.
The last time we had a tough finale with I think it was the women's flyweight division. We saw like 3 arm bars from guard on that.
How often do you see that?
Like it's low. Like that doesn't happen at the highest level at all anymore. No. Like it just doesn't happen. Everyone knows the escapes. And I remember, that was like Emily Whitmire. You know the cast and crew that were all on that season. It was an ugly card. We got Maurice Greene taking on Michelle Batista. Maurice Greene is minus 185. Batista plus 145. What's your take?
Yeah, if you're just looking at a style clash, then you would have to go with Batista all day long. But it's not quite that simple. He's actually terrible. And the kind of thing with Maurice Greene is he could be okay, but he's his own worst enemy, and as a result, he's kind of terrible as well. So we'll start with Michelle Batista. Michelle Batista on paper has got it all, dude. He was a bronze medalist at the 2008 Olympics. He's 1-1 against Daniel Cormier in wrestling competition. And technically, he's 2-1 over Daniel Cormier because the third and last time they were supposed to meet was at the 2008 Olympics, and Cormier bailed out with weight cutting issues. So it was a forfeit. They're 1-1 in actual competition. But what I'm getting at is this guy's top level wrestler out of Cuba, second to none. You know, he could be on paper a Yoel Romero. This guy's a bronze medalist. Yoel, a silver medalist. This guy's younger than Yoel. He's 34 years old. Yoel's in his 40s. But again, not quite that simple. He comes over to America.
And that's only what his...
He's not 34. I don't know. He's older than 34.
As you would say, that's only what he presents as his age.
Yeah. What does he present? Because he doesn't have a passport.
You never believe
right?
anybody's
when you come over on a raft that's made out of old tires. What documentation did you bring with you? They'll just take your name for whatever you say it is. He says he's 34. He's 34. So as far as wrestling goes, you think he just take these guys down and demolish them. And at a higher level, some of these other guys can wrestle. They'll beat him. But at the lower level, which is what he's fighting at, the wrestling should carry him. And on the regional scene, he was fighting out of the Florida regional. He's got, I think, 1 fight for Titan FC, maybe 1 fight for Fight Time Promotions, both Florida-based. And he didn't look great, dude. Like, he's a superior athlete. Doesn't look like a great athlete, but, you know, his wrestling credentials, he's a better athlete. He takes these guys down and he beats them. His last fight for Titan, I didn't think he looked great. He comes over to the UFC, or to the Ultimate Fighter here. He seems like he's going to be one of the favorites to win the show. I mean, that kind of, again, back class. And he didn't look great. He ends up getting knocked out. And I don't think his chin's there. I think he's an older guy. Yeah, he's a better wrestler. And if he can clinch up with you and take you down to the ground, then that's what he's going to do. But if you got him at bay and you can touch this guy up, he's one of those guys that's going to get tired real fast. And his game plan is going to fold. He's not going to be able to get the takedowns. He has no striking to back up that. So when the takedowns fail, there is no plan B and he loses. Now, Maurice Greene's a kickboxer by contrast. He's 6'7". I think he fought for Glory a couple times, and he's a good kickboxer. He was actually supposed to fight Volkan Oezdemir back in the day in a MMA fight, but Volkan he got hurt. He got staph or something. Volkan got signed to the UFC. Fight never happened, but he looks like he could be good. He comes onto this season of the Ultimate Fighter. They call him Mo the Pirate because one eye's looking at you and one eye's looking at Rick.
Okay.
Because one eye is way off to the other side. But again, 6'7", comes in high on that 260 limit, and is just a big, strong dude. Comes on the Ultimate Fighter, looks the part, wins his first fight. The thing is that he's his own worst enemy. Apparently he's got like a long family history of alcoholism, so he's drinking every night in the house.
It also explains the crook eye.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know about that crooked eye, but yeah, he just basically just drinks the entire time he's in the house, and then eventually he starts smoking. So he'd go in the backyard and smoke cigs, and then they'd tell him like, "Yo, man, like you got a fight coming up," and he'd be like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm just stressed out, smoking cigs." So then the girls on the show, because it's guys and girls, the girls on the show all get super weirded out and uncomfortable with him. One of them tries leaving the show. They all talk to the coaching staff, and they're like, "This Mo guy's a weirdo. He's drunk every night. He's loud. He's smoking." So they like talk to him, and they're like, "Yo, dog, calm it down." So he apologizes to the team. They say, "Hey, let's have a night out. We're gonna watch the fights on TV." Coaches go over. They have UFC on TV like they do every season. Fill some airspace because they got nothing else to fill the time with. And this guy's outside hiding, smoking cigs. And like the coaching staff catches him. They give him shit. Like, I got a buddy. You know who I'm talking about. Pat Man knows who I'm talking about. I got a buddy, and he's the same way. He could be a talented fighter, but he's his own worst enemy. He just always gets in his own way. Talented guy, good guy, deep down. Like I said, good friend of mine, but he'll never get to that next level because there's just demons in the closet he's not going to be able to overcome. And Mo DeReese is that. He loses the second fight in the Ultimate Fighter, same thing, gets knocked out. He got knocked out just so I can make things clear. Maurice Greene lost to Juan Francisco Diepa, who's in the finals, knocked him out in the first round, whereas Batista got caught by Justin Frazier. So they both respectively got knocked out in the first round by the two guys that are in the finals. They won their first fight, lost the second fight kind of situation. But you got Maurice Greene, who is his own worst enemy and is a tall, rangy kickboxer, against Michel Batista, who's probably over the hill at this stage in his career, who's the wrestler. You're going to take, at this level, the wrestler over the striker 9 times out of 10. But this might be the one time where it's real dangerous, because at 6'7", he's going to be on the outside. It's going to be hard to close that distance. And this isn't Yo Romero freestyle wrestling, shoot a blast double from halfway around the cage and nail you with it. He needs to get into that Greco-Roman clinch and like get a hold of you and slow you down. And he's going to eat shots in the process. He's chinny. Mo might be too, but at the same time, I think you avoid this fight like the plague. I would say dog or pass, but honestly, I'm not even feeling Batista. I'd be on the wrestler, Cuban wrestler, Olympian, 1-1 against Cormier. How awesome is all that? 10 years ago, dude. 10 years ago. It's a long time. Cormier is in the twilight of his career, 38 years old, I believe, and this guy's just getting started. I can't get behind it. The wrestler should win, but I'm just not feeling it, so I'm going to avoid this. However, when the DK line does get released, keep your eye on that, because this is likely a first or second round finish, and if you can get a good pricing on one of them, they're going to score big.
Yeah, and you probably would get cheap takedowns at least from Batista. Batista
would get the cheap takedown, but he doesn't really have a ground and pound game, whereas Mo DeReese is a killer standing.
All right, get right back up, and we'll take you right back down. Like cheap takedowns are like the easiest way to just build a safe floor, right?
He doesn't have the cardio for it. So gun to my head, I'm taking Maurice Greene, but the pricing could change things in terms of building a lineup.
Got Juan Espino taking on Justin Frazier. Espino -155, Frazier +135. What you take here?
Again, you got another tough fight here in that both guys are not very experienced and not very proven. Espino, he's the favorite in this spot, and I rightfully think he should be the favorite. He's 38 years old, and he's been fighting professionally in MMA. According to him, I started taking MMA seriously in 2016. So at age 36, he decides he wants to take MMA seriously, of all things. Moves to ATT. I'm sure that's helped him a little bit. And appears to be the better athlete in the spot. He is apparently like a Spanish wrestling champion, wherever, like the Canary Islands, which is a Spanish island.
Jesus.
Apparently, he's like some wrestling legend over there.
Oh, great.
So he can wrestle at a bum level, and his striking's like I said, got the knockout win over DeReese, but he's the better athlete, and he's going to have the wrestling background, and he's going to have some experience. Justin Frazier, meanwhile, has beaten up a lot of low-end guys. And one thing I always look at on The Ultimate Fighter, because you might not know the most about these guys. You don't know their history. You don't know their training regimen. You don't know all that stuff. When they get onto The Ultimate Fighter, the coaching staffs from both respective teams, you got Team Whitaker and Team Gastelum, they analyze these guys. They put them through the ringers. They check out things. And they draft them. So draft order doesn't mean anything. Really doesn't mean anything. But it kind of means something. And then, like, what did you show prospect-wise? Because that's all we can really look at these guys at. Even though they're not prospects, we're looking at them as prospects because they could potentially, one of them's going to win The Ultimate Fighter. And in Justin Frazier's case, he was the very last pick of the entire season for the heavyweights. And within the first week of training, he like broke down. He's throwing up. He can't keep up with the team workouts. But to his credit, mid-season, he comes around. He gets in form. He gets in shape. He starts fighting a little bit better. He wins 2 fights, and now he's in the finals of The Ultimate Fighter. But they didn't really think much of him to begin with. His regional scene career hasn't really been spectacular. And again, his losses are to known guys in that he lost to Mike Wessel and Derek Lewis. Both guys smashed him in the first round, but his wins are just over absolutely nobody. Whereas ESPINO, on the other hand, has fought a lot of nobodies, but he's beaten Rodney Wallace, who's a UFC veteran, who's a credible guy. He beat Rodney Wallace after like a 6-year layoff. He was on the layoff, and he beat Rodney Wallace. That's pretty crazy.
One of the top-rated Russian fighters.
Yeah, this guy just goes to every
Rodney
promotion,
Wallace.
just goes to every weird
know,
promotion and fights every
When you
weird
go on
guy.
Tapology, he's always listed. He's a classic guy that you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
You know, this heavyweight prospect coming into the UFC has a win over this guy. And it's like, okay, that's legit.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And in his case, on The Ultimate Fighter, in the first round, he beat Ben Sassoli, who's the first overall pick to win the show. And in the second round, he beat Maurice Green, who's really not all that bad. So he looked better on the show. He's looked better on the regional scene. And he just looks like the better athlete who might have a little more experience. And I'm going to bank off that. He was allegedly, according to him, 17-0 as an amateur. So that's experience. That's a little bit of back class, which is enough to beat a guy that has no back class in Justin Frazier. So sign me up for Juan Espino.
With Pedro Munhoz taking on Brian Caraway. Pedro Munhoz minus 230. Brian Caraway is plus 190. Here's a fight.
This is a good fight.
It's a very good fight. Pedro Munhoz, kind of dynamic jiu-jitsu, pretty well-rounded all the way around at this point in his career. Guy's a warrior. He goes to war. You know, he doesn't have the best striking defense, but that's not something that's really going to bother him against Brian Caraway. The question is, Brian Caraway is a master at just slowing everything down.
Yeah, he's crafty.
He just can make... He's a terrible DraftKings play for the most part. I know he's going to be an underdog, and he's going to have a low price, and maybe that gets enticing, but it's just like the upside. Maybe he could be a cash game play in lots of situations, but like his upside is like 70 points. Like he wants to slow this fight down. And because of the threats that Pedro Munhoz presents for him in terms of just a real dynamic jiu-jitsu game, I don't know if he's going to submit Brian Caraway. It's not a foregone conclusion that it won't happen, but Brian Caraway does have an ability to slow these fights down, make them ugly, make them greasy, get it up again. I expect to see a lot of cage work here.
Yeah.
And cage work doesn't score, so we haven't got a DraftKings price yet, but this is a fight I'm going to probably avoid. And people probably will be on Munhoz because he does have that finishing ability, and I get it, but man, Brian Caraway is so crafty. He's very durable. It's a very good matchup. I'm interested to see how it plays out. See if Munhoz, because Munhoz had that opportunity against Jimmy Rivera way back when. That was a few years ago. We actually watched that at Pogie Nark Sean McCormick's place.
Oh, yeah. Good fight.
And that was a few years ago. That was a good opportunity for him. But like this is a kind of another, like, one of those like perennial top 10 kind of guys. See if Munhoz has made improvements, ready to take that next step. The pick is Munhoz here, but I've been burned by Caraway and fading Caraway too many times in the past to actually put any action on this one.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with Caraway. He's kind of built a reputation as a bit of a prospect killer. He goes in there. He's got no reason, he's got no sense beating these guys, and he goes out and he does it every time. And not every time, but he gives them a tougher fight than he should. And he's fought in tough guys. He hasn't won every fight, but the Rafael Assunção fight, this is one of the best guys in the world. He gives them a go. Aljamain Sterling fight. Oh, he's gonna lose this fight. He gets the win. That Cody Stamann fight. Everyone's picking Cody Stamann, and Stamann did win, but Jesus, Caraway gave him a go. If Caraway would have gotten the decision, I don't think that many people should have had any merit to complain about it. Yeah, he's crafty, black belt. So if you're looking at Pedro Munhoz as one of the best grapplers in the division, yeah, it's going to be hard to put away Brian Caraway. Flip side to that, if you are picking Caraway, yeah, 70 points would be your ceiling because he can submit lower-end guys, but he's not submitting Pedro Munhoz, so that's out of the question. I look at this fight as almost two things. Thing number one, Pedro Munhoz seems to do everything a little bit better than Brian Caraway. He's better at jiu-jitsu, and that's Caraway's one big thing is that when he gets you to the ground, he can take your back, he can control you, he can prevent you from getting up. That's going to be way tougher against Pedro Munhoz. Second thing, as far as the wrestling goes, Caraway, you know, he's a Pacific Northwest guy. He's tough, he's durable, he's grindy, he's got okay wrestling, but I don't know that he's necessarily stronger. I think he could get Pedro Munhoz down, but what are you going into when you take him down? You're going into the guillotine choke first and foremost because you know that bitch is waiting for you. And second of all, when you do hit the ground, you're not passing his guard. You're slowing the fight down, which is what he likes to do. Slow the action down. He'd be comfortable with that. So yeah, I don't think he's going to score necessarily big, but that's maybe one advantage he has, but I don't know that he's necessarily strong enough to consistently take Pedro Munhoz down. So let's say it's a striking battle now. Caraway's worked a lot on his striking, you know? There's no power, but it's point, and he can outwork guys. But Pedro Munhoz has turned a corner in his career, dude. He is got a chip on his shoulder, and he's aggressive, and I like it. You look at the fights since that Jimmy Rivera fight, because he lost that fight by split decision. Russell Doane is toasting him, then he submits him with the armbar. Justin Scoggins looks good, then he toasts him with the guillotine choke. Damian Stasiak, no problem. Rob Font chokes him out like nothing. Those are credible wins. He dusts all these guys. John Dodson, he chased John Dodson around. He lost a split. He chased him around. You could have given him the decision. He wanted to fight, but Dodson's going to Dodson. You know how he is. Backs up. He's so damn quick, a lot quicker than these guys anyways, that he'll just keep moving, pot shot you, loses that. And then that Brett Johns fight. Brett Johns doesn't have any punching power, but he's not bad. He's not a bad striker, but he doesn't really have any punching power. Pedro Munhoz showed no respect to his striking whatsoever. Walked through everything he had to give and gave it to him. He dropped him with body shots. He dropped him with leg kicks. He toasted him upstairs. He completely battered him pillar to post. Brett Johns is a good grappler. I think he's only a brown belt, but a good grappler. He's a judo black belt. He's a credible guy. Because there was no punching power there to at least keep Pedro Munhoz honest, he just completely walked him down and beat on him. And Caraway's going to face that exact same thing. He doesn't have the punching power to keep Pedro Munhoz honest, and he doesn't have the speed or the quickness of John Dodson to just elude him for 3 rounds. So he's going to get marched down. He's going to get backed up. He's going to get hit. If he shoots a desperation takedown, I wouldn't say Pedro Munhoz can't choke him out, but it's going to be tough because Caraway's a durable guy, and again, a BJJ black belt. But I got Pedro Munhoz winning this fight. As far as cash game plays, don't know what the price is, but I would consider him there. And as far as the 230, yeah, you never love 230, but Caraway, keep in mind, Caraway hasn't really been active over the years. He's got those wins. He's like Mitch Clark. Mitch Clark lived off that Ally Quinta win for like 3-4 years because he would only just fight once a year. And
Caraway's living off the Aljo win.
He beat Aljo, and since then, it's a lot of sitting around and waiting. And
he's had a rough go.
Oh, my God.
He's had a rough go. His whole life has been dragged through the mud.
A rough
It's
go.
not his fault. Like,
no.
Man.
Kudos
to him
for being in this spot.
And for being a respectable dude throughout it. Because, like, that's got to be hard.
Yeah.
Just, like, for all of that, like, dirty laundry to just be aired out there. And everyone has always hated him. Because there's a weird thing in MMA, and like, let's call a spade a spade. There's a weird thing in MMA. If fans think that your girlfriend is hot, then they hate you. Like,
oh, yeah.
There's nothing. Yeah. I know that he got portrayed as the villain on the Ronda season, but like, we know how TV works and production. Like, I don't know how much of that was fabricated. Like, they fabricate a bunch of these types of dramas and stuff in the houses and stuff like that. It is what it is, right? Weird stuff happens on The Ultimate Fighter. They try to make you look like the bad guy, and they already had Brian Caraway that everyone hated because he was dating Miesha Tate.
Well, Ronda,
they already had him
claimed,
as a villain, so why not just amp it up a little bit, make him even more hated?
Didn't somebody say he punched them in the back of the head?
Yeah,
so he got accused of that.
There's cameras everywhere, and they didn't have camera of that.
It's,
so okay,
yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
but here's one thing with Brian Caraway that I'll give him mad respect for, because I wouldn't consider myself a Caraway fan. I don't know how many people do consider themselves Caraway fans. But yeah, this guy's been through a lot. But remember when he was on The Ultimate Fighter? Not the season where Tate coached against Ronda, but he was physically on The Ultimate Fighter as a contestant.
Yeah.
He had like nerve issues. They basically said like he's got a ton of experience, but he goes into fights just self-doubt, doesn't want to fight, doesn't think he's got it. And everyone he was portrayed on the season as kind of a pussy. And then he comes off the season, it's like, oh, he's Miesha Tate's bitch. Like, that's his reputation. And he goes out there and fights the best guys.
Yeah.
And gives a damn good account of himself.
He's a sturdy veteran, man.
As he's doing that, he coaches his girlfriend or his wife, I don't know if they were married, but he coaches Miesha Tate to a world fucking championship while himself competing at the highest echelon of the sport. And his reputation is he's a bitch.
He's the Rodney Dangerfield of MMA, man. He can't get any respect.
What more can I do for you? And I feel bad that I'm not giving him his respect here. I'd love to see him go out there and win. I really would.
For like 6 years, I have sat across the desk from you.
And talk shit.
And talk shit about Brian Caraway. And you know what? I feel bad about it.
So do I. So do I.
You know, the guy is he's done some good work in the UFC, and it's finally time that we give him some damn respect.
I hear you, dude.
We got Edmund Shabazian taking on Darren Stewart. A guy that maybe I have not given the respect. We got Shabazian as a minus 120 favorite, taking on Stewart plus 100. Stewart came in at like minus 170 as the opener, which is laughable. And it got bet down pretty hard. This guy, he's very one-dimensional. And even his one-dimension, his stand-up, it's burned me the last 2 times. But I cashed in hard the three fights before that. So we're pretty good so far on Darren Stewart, let me tell you. Especially, I got Julian Marquez 11-1 by submission. Which was absurd. That was like him coming off of getting submitted by Carl Roberson, who's a kickboxer. So I was just like, I don't even know if Julian Marquez has much of a ground game, but he's fighting Darren Stewart.
But here's the thing. You know 3 things. You know number 1, that Darren Stewart's never been knocked out. Thing number 2, this fight's not going the distance. And number 3, Julian Marquez is going to win. So when you factor those things in, only possible outcome is a Julian Marquez by submission. 11-1, good.
11-1 was good. Stewart obviously, or maybe not obviously, but definitely, in my opinion, has the advantage on the feet here. But we're going to try to take this fight to the ground. I agree with the line movement. I got Shabazian here. I've never sat here and picked Darren Stewart, and I don't plan on doing it today, Cody.
Yeah, there you go. I'm 4-1 with him because he smoked me on that Charles Byrd fight his last time out. He's getting his ass handed to him. And then Charles Byrd just flat gasses out and gives him the one moment that he needs to fight his way back into it. He's one-dimensional. He's a kickboxer. We know that about him. That's how he's going to get his victories. He needs to stuff the takedowns, keep it standing, and then wait for you to gas and then beat you. His 2-fight winning streak has been exactly that. He fought Eric Spicely, who failed to take him down, and then gassed out. Yep. And then he TKO'd him, and Charles Byrd was the same thing. Charles Byrd's kicking his ass, but then he gassed out, and he gave him that opening, and he hits him, and he knocks him out. Shabazian, the biggest thing about him is he's an Edmund Taverdian pupil, so I think he's just going to garner a lot of bit of hate and distrust right off the bat. He's also got what looks like an inflated record because I think he's, 7-0, and 6 of his wins are by first-round knockouts over complete putzes on the regional scene. So it's hard to gauge him. He's 21 years old. He's training at a Glendale Fight Club. So I could see why people are thinking Stewart's got 5 fights in the UFC. Stewart's won his last 2. He's beaten some okay guys. He's a stand-up specialist. Shabazian appears to be a stand-up specialist. Why wouldn't you take the older, more credible, experienced guy? But I see something there with Shabazian because he's actually not been on my radar, but he's kind of been like an MMA super kid for like the last 6 years or something. Started training when he was 10 years old. He's a Shotokan karate black belt. He's an amateur boxing standout. He's a BJJ purple belt. He's won a lot of high-end tournaments as a purple belt. He's that next generation of young killers that are going to take the sport over. He's only 21. This guy at 25 is going to be even better. I don't know what his training situation's like, but again, I'm not going to say Edmund Taverdian is going to ruin him because Glendale Fight Club, they're known for producing a lot of top Armenian talent. This tough Carl Parisian, Manny Gamburian, Sako Chivichian, like all these different guys. they're tough. It's a good coaching staff there. Edmund's not a great coach, but all in all, they still produce world-class boxers out of that gym. So I think he's going to be good enough to fight the lower echelon fighters of the UFC and beat them. And Darren Stewart is exactly that. This kid, again, to me, I think he beats him everywhere. I think if the fight stays standing, because of that karate background, he's a better striker. He's got big power, even though Stewart hasn't been knocked out before. Not saying he can't knock him out. And if Stewart tastes that power like he did against Julian Marquez and he goes into desperation mode, he's going to get submitted by this kid. This kid is going to be too elusive for him. He's not going to gas out like Eric Spicely or Charles Bird because he's a 21-year-old phenom. And I get what everyone's saying. You don't know that because he's finished all of his other opponents so quick. It was the fight on Dana White's Contenders Series where it's like, okay, you've smoked everybody really quick. Now we're going to give you a 7-1 prospect that you won't smoke out real quick. And he did in 40 seconds. He's just a finisher. When somebody can stand up to that kind of adversity against him, then maybe we'll see if he crumbles or not. But I don't know that Darren Stewart's that guy. So not only am I taking SHAHBAZYAN, the almost near even money that it is, all over. And if the DK price reflects that, this guy can get a first or second round stoppage.
Lock.
He should be cheap. To me, I'm looking at him. I'm not going to say he's a lock. No one's ever a lock. But I like him.
I mean, you lock him into your lineup.
Lock him into your lineup. But the one thing I'll admit on this card, and we got to give the people the warning about the gambling because this is where it comes in. There's so many fights this weekend. You have, again, 2 UFCs, a Bellator, a LFA, KSW. There's so many lines that if you're interested in SHAHBAZYAN and you think, geez, this is a good play, yeah, just watch some more tape. But Darren Stewart will beat himself. And I think SHAHBAZYAN will just be right place, right time to get his first official UFC victory. And we'll see how far he can go beyond that.
You're right, Cody. Because odds and lines are subject to change. See website for actual odds. If you or anybody you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Thanks for reminding me about that. I completely forgot. We move on. We got Antonina Shevchenko taking on Ji-Yoon Kim, the longest arms in MMA, or at least proportionally.
Proportionally.
Have you ever seen her arms, man?
Yeah.
I've sent you pictures of her arms. It's weird, man. She's got like a 75-inch reach or something like that, and she's just this small, like 135-pound woman. It's crazy. Shevchenko is minus 310. Kim is 255. Kim's been able to use that reach and use her striking to her advantage a bunch early on in her UFC career, and that's great, but this is a setup fight. This is the perfect stylistic matchup for Antonina, who day in, day out is training with the best female striker basically in MMA. It's a one-sided striking affair. It seems pretty clear to me. This is a setup fight for Valentina's sister to get on the right page. And we were talking about, I forget who it was like the other week or whatever, but just getting ready in like the champ camp. I guess it was, what's his name? Martin Day. He actually didn't look too bad.
I thought he won. I'm glad he lost, but I thought he won.
Yeah, I had him on my DraftKings, my main DraftKings lineup. He scored 65 points in a
yeah,
loss. Like, if he got that win, it's 95. You're laughing all the way to the bank, right? It's like, that's the way these things go. Like, he looked fine. He looked ready. I'm sure Valentina getting ready for next week. Are you going to the card?
Oh, yeah.
I'll be there
Never
too.
missed one. Never missed one. Don't plan on it.
I'll be there as
Who
well.
you going with? Bogey Rob?
Pogi Rob and main event Kent.
Oh, all right. I'll see you guys there.
I see you there. So yeah, Valentina's getting ready for the biggest, or basically her biggest fight. She's had so many big fights; it's hard to say that. She's got a big fight coming up next week. Antonina has been part of that entire training camp. They travel around the world together, basically, traveling and working with all these different people. Like, I think she's gonna be ready for Ji-Yoon Kim. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, well, it is a
I
setup
wasn't
fight.
that impressed with her, to be perfectly honest, on her Dana White Contender Series fight. But, like, this is a fight. This is a stylistic matchup that I think just, like, plays right into her cards.
Yeah, I think you avoid this fight like the plague. I think you honestly do. Because it is a setup fight. That's what the UFC wants to do. But just simply carrying that last name, Shevchenko, is the reason why she's a minus 310. And you don't want to fall into a situation where you're betting someone who's now become chalk when they really shouldn't be based on that. There's a lot of red flags with sister Antonina. First and foremost, she's 34 years old. She's the older sister. So where the fuck she been the last couple of years? She's not an MMA fighter. She's a kickboxer. She's a Muay Thai stylist. Kind of the same thing as Valentina. But Valentina won world titles, like legitimate world titles. She won European titles, legitimate European titles. Antonina didn't. So she was the older, less successful kickboxer. Now, I think Valentina Shevchenko is a judo black belt as well. I don't think Antonina has really trained her ground game to the same level. Valentina Shevchenko bursts on the scene and starts tearing through all this opposition. Antonina doesn't. She's kind of just that girl that's along for the ride. She's Jason Guida to Clay Guida. She's Dan Miller to Jim Miller. You know what I'm getting at? It's just she's not her sister. She's got her sister's last name, and again, that's why she's getting all the love. But when I watch her kickboxing bouts, I think she's got something like, don't quote me on this, but the figures are relatively on. I think she's got 42 wins, and 8 of them are by TKO. So she's not a finisher. The Dana White Contender Series fight, she got the finish over a lowly ranked opponent, and her prior 4 victories at MMA prior to that were all by decision. So I don't think she's going to go out there and necessarily dominate Ji-Yoon Kim, who's got 3 fights in the UFC, has fought in very tough girls such as Justine Quiche. And again, she's got those long arms. She's a volume-paced fighter. Sticks in your face. It works you. It works you. It works you. Tires you. Shevchenko, I don't think she's going to get tired because she's fought at a decently world-class level enough and has gone decision so many times. I don't expect her to gas. I expect because she is training with her sister at a world championship level, she'll be more than prepared. She was supposed to take on Ashley Evans-Smith in this spot, which is a tougher fight in the sense that Evans-Smith would have just tried to bully her to the ground. She's got a full camp. Ji-Yoon Kim does not have a full camp. She's coming in short notice. So, you're right. It is a setup fight. But at minus 310, I don't think she's that good. I just think it's a setup fight. And I don't want to bet it just based on that sole fact. So I don't think she scores shit on DK.
No, I don't want her on DK.
If she gets the victory, for the minus 310, I'll be sweating it. And fight goes the distance would be my personal play. But we see this, again, we talked about this already on the show.
The odds will be, I'm not looking at them right now, but the odds will be wide for that. Like, this fight's going to decision. It'll be a stand-up, tepid, striking affair.
If I had a crystal ball, right, and I was seeing into your future, and Ji-Yoon Kim got dropped or slipped or got a kick caught, whatever, and Antonina Shevchenko got on top of her, and Ji-Yoon Kim armbarred her from guard, my crystal ball tells me you would not be shocked. You wouldn't, because that's what we're dealing with here. So for 310, don't touch it. Avoid it clear. Walk past so many other fights. Invest somewhere else.
We got Kevin, the Angel of Death, Aguilar, taking on Rick Glenn. Aguilar minus 115, Rick Glenn minus 105. Pretty much a straight pick 'em. Who you got?
Yeah, I didn't like Kevin Aguilar a couple years back because he clearly stole that nickname off Demasio Page, Angel of Death. Come on, this is MMA. There's only really room for one guy to be called Angel of Death. But Kevin Aguilar really lives up to the nickname, dude. This guy is...
Look how many Pitbulls there are.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone's...
Well, no, but Pitbull's the kind of nickname that you could have a zillion of because it's simple. The Angel of Death is very specific, and I don't know. I don't know how you steal that nickname. I bet you there's a lot
of Angels of Deaths in MMA.
How many crazy horses do you think there are in MMA?
With a K?
Yeah.
1.
Technically, some fucking idiot from out west, like Alberta or something,
well,
took the nick. He's like, no one want amateur.
You're just full out robbing.
Like, buddy, what are you doing? That's how I look at it here. Like, buddy, what do you do? But when I watch Kevin Aguilar, like, all he is excitement, man. His LFA career was just tremendous. Solid looking record, by the way.
Wins over Joey Gomez on the Dana White Contender Series. Tan Lee, who's like a very talented striker.
Yeah, Ultimate Fighter veteran. Good striker.
Justin Radar, Ultimate Fighter veteran.
Justin Radar is a high-end BJJ black belt under Rafael Lovato.
And Damon Jackson, who we used to pick on quite a bit years ago on this show. But
is also dynamic.
He's a really
very
good
fun.
Regional scene guy.
Super
but then
fun
when
to
he's come up to the pros, he just doesn't quite cut it. So like that's kind of the level we're dealing with here. It's like real fringe.
Yeah, and that's my issue with Kevin Aguilar is that he might get fight of the night here. He might get $50,000. If he was fighting in the UFC previously, he'd probably have racked up a lot of bonuses because he goes for it. But that might also be his detriment because his last fight in particular, he looked so good in LFA before that fight with Joey Gomez. Joey Gomez, 7-0, unheralded. He gave him everything he could handle. Kevin Aguilar, there's a debate there that he lost that fight, split decision. But it was such a fun fight. You give the guy the contract because you want him not wasting the best years of his life out here. Get under the bright lights and do something. But, yeah, when you look at his record, as impressive as it is and as exciting as it is, Tony Kelly, from MTV fame. Damon Jackson, fanned out of the UFC quick. Justin Rader, my personal boy. I interviewed him that time at Fight Network. That's probably where you remember him from.
Yeah.
Him and Lovato came in. Guy's a stud. No striking, very one-dimensional. And again, fight went the distance. It wasn't like it was a walkthrough. Tan Lee, one-dimensional striker. Joey Gomez, unheralded. They're fun fights. They're exciting fights. If he wins, he's going to score you a lot of DK points. But he is fighting middling competition. Yep. And the one thing with Rick Glenn is he fights elite competition. And the few times that they give him the step down, he outclasses these guys. Because he's a technician. He is a better technician than Kevin Aguilar. His wrestling defense is shit, but Kevin Aguilar is not a wrestler. And his grappling is good enough that he's going to be able to thwart off any of the submission attempts, I think, from Aguilar. So I think it's going to be a striking battle. Aguilar will come at him hot, but eventually Rick Glenn's going to settle. He's going to find his spots. He's going to pick his spots, and he's going to beat him up. So give me Rick Glenn. I see the fight go in the distance. It's a pick 'em. You're going to go one to two sides here, and you're going to get basically the same money. But I got to go with the experienced guy in Rick Glenn, who we've seen compete at the highest level and give a good account of himself, versus Kevin Aguilar, who just looks very fun on the regional scene, but often fights to his opponent's level, and that could be to his detriment against a crafty guy like Glenn.
Moving on down the card,
Moving on
it's
down.
shocking that this fight is taking place buried on this. Alex Perez taking on Joseph Benavidez, multiple-time title challenger. Joseph Benavidez.
Probably one of the best flyweights of all time. Not the best, but one of the best flyweights of all time.
Oh, he's top 3.
He's a stud.
It's the only debate is whether you have Cejudo ahead of him at this point, because he got the win over Cejudo.
Cejudo won the belt.
Actually won the belt. Otherwise, there's no other debate to be had. He's obviously up there.
Yeah.
Not only that, he's the underdog.
Crazy,
Alex Perez has had a good little run here. Don't get me wrong, but Joe Benavidez is getting absolutely zero respect here. And I understand he didn't look great against Sergio Pettis last time out, but that was coming off of a 2-year layoff, knee surgery, and you know what? That type of stuff definitely does.
Where's my red flag? Where's my red flag?
Oh,
it was sitting here somewhere.
Oh, I get it. Trust me. I understand why the line is the way it is right here.
Sure.
It's just weird to see it. And like hell, he could be all the way back. I haven't caught any interviews with him quite yet this week. I want to check in on that. Like with this type of situation, this is a guy that like maybe watch an interview, like get some information about how his steps have been taken. The problem is we talk about it all the time. When you deal with these really, really small weight classes where speed, accuracy, and all of that are the most important traits to have. Flyweights do not age well, and when you add in all of these injuries and so on and so forth, you end up with Joseph Benavidez being a plus 110 underdog against Alex Perez when Benavidez has fought everybody and given people really tough fights along the way. I'm not jumping off. I think it's just a little bit too much hype on Alex Perez. I've been impressed by him, but this is a massive step up in competition. If Joseph Benavidez shows up 80% of what he was before, I think he can get the W here, and we're getting dog value.
Yeah, well, to your points.
But you're trusting a lot of unknowns.
To your questions, one, why is this fight buried so low in the prelims?
It's insane.
Because the division's about to get wiped out. So you don't really care if the viewer's like, damn, that Joseph Benavidez is sick. Can't wait to see him fight again. It's like, yeah, you'll be watching him in Ryzen and New Year's the next time you see that guy fight again. Yeah, it's not going to get any respect. It's a flyweight fight. It's buried for a reason. Benavidez, we've seen him at 35, and you can't make the debate that, man, he used to fight at 35 back in the WEC. He could go back up. No, you can't, because times have changed, and bantamweights now were lightweights then, and he's not going to be able to compete. So this is almost, in some senses, potentially his last UFC hurrah. We just don't know where he's at. Like you mentioned, the 80%. You made an interesting point where you're like, maybe check out some interviews, because you called that to a T with Lando Venata. You're like, head's not in the right space. Head is not in the right space. Avoid Venata. Right call, even though it ended up being a draw, regardless. Flip side to that, you say last week, Louis Smolka's head is in the right place. Smolka looked good. against a,
I see these things.
You see these things. So maybe seeing an interview on Joseph Benavidez could help you, but I don't think so because it's not where he's at mentally like those other guys. It's where he's at physically, and physically he might be done in at this point. His fight with Cejudo, legendary in the sense that you beat Henry Cejudo, who's now the UFC champion. You win this fight, why could you not get a rematch with Henry Cejudo for the title? Assuming it still existed in some capacity, why couldn't Joseph Benavidez? He can't beat Demetrius Johnson. We know that. Let him fight Cejudo, whom he has the victory over. But he looked bad in the Cejudo fight, man. He should not have won the Cejudo fight. He got some early rounds in, and then I didn't think he looked good late. Wasn't enough for Cejudo to come back and win it. And Benavidez then takes 2 years off. I'm pretty sure he has his knee reconstructed.
He did.
He leaves Team Alpha Male, at least briefly, and goes to the UFC Performance Institute in Vegas, spends his time there, does that last camp for Sergio Pettis there. And the thing with the Sergio Pettis fight is, we know how to beat Sergio Pettis. We know Joseph Benavidez has the goods to beat Sergio Pettis. Get a hold of this guy, take him down. But A, the knee's compromised. He can't wrestle at the same level that he used to. And B, we talk about this all the time. 25, 35, those are bad divisions to lose your speed and athleticism in because it just moves too quickly. And Alex Perez has got a lot of experience, 25 pro fights. He's a young guy. He's going to have a 2-inch height advantage. He's got a little bit of size on Joseph Benavidez. His striking looks like it's come a long way when you consider the fact that he pretty much just a grappler. He's got a lot of tricky little, submissions, loves the Anaconda, loves the Darce, gets the submission win on Dana White's Contender Series, comes over to the UFC and against Eric Sheldon, the guy knows how to wrestle. The guy completely neutralizes Sheldon, who some people are high up on, and makes him look terrible. Against Jose Torres, here's another guy that everybody's high up on, everybody loves, and he dusts him. His striking looks good. His wrestling looks good. He's young. He's an up-and-comer. He still is experienced. Maybe he's got the goods, but with Benavidez, there's too much of an unknown. So I would take Benavidez in that it's disrespectful to have this guy as the underdog. He should be the favorite. He's still been at a level. But coming off of a weekend where you see Chuck Liddell, it is a solid reminder of Benavidez is not at that level.
Chuck Liddell.
But it's a solid reminder that it is a young man's game. That's what I'm getting at, is that fighting is a young man's game, and Joseph Benavidez with the knee injury, it could be, it could be potentially dangerous.
Leah Letson, Julius Stoliarenko, minus 245, plus 110 or plus 210. Any value on either side here? I don't know who these people are.
I know, and I know we're running short on time, being that we got to still do an entire other show. But Leah Letson had the experience. She had the grappling pedigree coming in. Julia Stoliarenko was like a karate champion, European level. I don't know that she's going to be able to grapple with Leah Letson. Letson probably snags up a cheesy submission like an armbar or something when the fight does hit the ground. Yeah, the value in there would be 245 on middling female fighters, probably pass it. Leah Letson's probably going to be somewhere in that $8,700 range, $8,800 range. But if she isn't too expensive, she might even be more than that. But if she isn't too expensive, this is the type of opponent that she could go out there and get a first-round submission. However, she could also go out there and get beat in the first round because there's very little to go off here. But I'm going to go with the ground tactician, Leah Letson, to get the job done.
Roosevelt Roberts takes on Daryl Horcher. Roosevelt Roberts minus 320, Horcher plus 260. Seems like a lot of juice to be paying for a Dana White Contender Series guy.
Yeah.
Who, looked good in that spot, but, Horcher also kind of... He's had a tough road, but that's because they've been giving him real tough matchups along the way here.
Yeah, plus he wrecked a motorcycle somewhere in between that.
Yeah. He held his own at least for a round and a half against Khabib. That was an impossible situation to be put into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, short notice in your UFC debut.
Roberts will probably be super, super popular on DK. Horcher's no schlub on the feet though. He's got some decent boxing. So this one's I'm very trepidatious about this one there, Cody. I wonder if you are thinking the same way as me.
Yeah, I just don't understand the odds. I got Roosevelt Roberts winning in that he's the younger, better athlete, and that with Daryl Horcher, he looked good on the regional scene. He was a serviceable guy, beat some good names, beat EJ Brooks, beat Alex Ricci. Again, good talent, mid-level talent. But he just hasn't really performed at the UFC level. Yeah, Khabib Nurmagomedov, taking that on short notice in your debut and getting starched, there's no shame in that. But the Devin Powell fight, which is a year and 2 months or something later, because he fights Khabib, which is like getting into a train accident. Then he got into an actual motorcycle accident. Then he had to like rehab himself. I thought his wife said like he almost died or something. It was probably bad. And he's not Ben Roethlisberger. He's not an athlete that's going to come back all the way from something like that. So they gave him the Devin Powell treatment. Hey, dude, we gave you your last fight.
Yeah, we screwed you.
We gave you the
we
toughest
screwed
guy.
You last time out.
Gave you the toughest guy in the roster.
Yeah.
So this next fight, he was the worst guy in the roster. He scraped by Powell, dude. He like did not look good. He looked real tough. Again, year 2 month layoff. Cardio probably wasn't in check. Horrific accident. Probably wasn't able to train at the same level. Wasn't in shape. Won the first couple early rounds of Powell in that he's a better boxer. But his cardio didn't check out. He didn't really have anything other than his serviceable boxing. And that boxing is not good enough to carry him against tougher guys. And with Scott Holtzman is at Horcher's level, but he's fresh. He's fresher. He's the better athlete. He's able to he's got more give to his game. And he's able to beat him. And I see the same thing with Roberts. Roberts is the young, hungry, up-and-comer, can wrestle a little bit, can box a little bit, decent submission game. He's kind of well-rounded enough that he'd be able to give Horcher fits wherever the fight takes place, like if he mixes in the takedowns, let's say. But even if it just stays standing, I think he's too fast, too quick, little rangier, and the only way he loses is if he gets, chewed down and grinded down to a halt. But I don't think that Horcher's got the cardio to do that anymore. So give me Roosevelt Roberts. Don't love the line, though, so avoiding that.
Tim Dirty Bird Means, -370. Ricky Rainey, +310. I like Means. But I also think that the line may be a little bit wide here. That is my main concern. But I think Means able to hang out at range, and he's pretty clinical with the elbows and his straight strikes if he can maintain that range. But that's the risk we take. You just kind of go back. Like, I'm not saying Tim Means is as dynamic as Michael Venom Page, but
no, but
Ricky Rainey
in his own way, he's pretty damn dynamic.
Exactly, and just Ricky Rainey got styled on. Michael Venom Page was looking at the monitors.
He does that in every fight.
I know, but
everybody gets clowned.
That was my first introduction to Ricky Rainey, and I was actually surprised when he got signed to the UFC. I think Tim Means wins. I think he crushes him, but -370 is a lot to be paying here.
Yeah, I think this is hopefully get Tim Means back on track for the UFC because again,
spot.
He's not a contender. He's probably a gatekeeper at this point in his career, but he's not even a gatekeeper because you're not giving him to young up and comers to see how good they really are. Just give him some fun fights where he can style on people and he can be the Dirty Bird. You got to let the Dirty Bird fly, Paul. And he can't really fly against certain level of opposition, but I think they're doing him a good favor here in giving him Ricky Rainey. I was just as surprised as you were when Ricky Rainey got signed. What has Ricky Rainey done? Bellator had actually his contract was up with Bellator, and they were like, no need for this guy. And they brought him in to fight Muslim Salikov in the UFC because they were getting Salikov that treatment. He was coming off his loss to Alex Garcia. They paid good money for him. They want to market him. They give him that treatment, and he wins. The thing with Ricky Rainey is that he's 35. He's very one-dimensional in that he's just a striker. But being just a striker, all of his losses have come to strikers, more competent strikers. But when you look at his record, his losses are to Johnny Buck, who knocked him out in a minute and a half, who's a one-dimensional country boy striker. Diego Lima, beat him by split, who's a Muay Thai stylist striker. Michael Venom Page, I don't know that he has a ground game. No. He is pretty much 100% a striker. Chidi Njokwani, I can tell you he does not have a ground game. He is a one-dimensional striker. And Muslim Salikov is a former world Sanda champion who does not have a ground game. Those are his 5 losses. So, yeah, he's a striker, but whenever he fights anybody who's
a better striker,
who that's their game, they beat him. And he doesn't have wrestling to fall back on.
Yep.
He doesn't have grappling to fall back on. Tim Means has all of those things. Tim Means is probably a better striker.
One-way traffic.
Yeah. And whereas Ricky Rainey's been stopped in the past, I think 3 of his 5 losses are by knockout. Tim Means, even though he's lost his last 2, he smoked on Bilal Muhammad, and gave him a go. And Muhammad is so tough. He took it, and he got him by a split. He beat Sergio Moraes in his last fight. Bodies in Brazil, and they got him a split. This isn't 2-fight losing streak. He looks like he's getting worse. This is some bad luck over his last 2 fights. Here's a freebie to get back in the win column so that you're not on a 3-fight losing streak. And Ricky Rainey should be that opponent. Play him as far as 370 is 378, But as far as DK goes, yeah, if you're going to pay up for somebody and he's going to be a chalk guy, he can probably stop Ricky Rainey with between 1 or 2. And if he doesn't, he'll quit because Tim Means has a tendency to do that. But this is the type of opponent that won't be able to take that early pressure.
Finally, we got Raoni Barcelos taking on Chris Gutierrez, -475. Barcelos Plus 380 Gutierrez you got.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sound like a genius by saying this one, but Barcelos is my play of the. He's my lock of the whole card. This guy, if he wasn't 33 years old,
Going out on a limb here with the minus 500
that's what
favorite.
I mean. I don't benefit anything from being
I know,
like,
I
this
know, I
is
know.
my guy. I think the odds makers and anybody who's
They're on
steamed
it.
the early line, they realize it. But if it wasn't for the fact that he was 33, he looks like he would be a damn fine prospect. I know he's only had one fight in the UFC. People might consider him a prospect. Not a prospect. Already won titles at the regional level. BJJ black belt. Striking, sick, tough. Cardio checks out. Has heart. Has ring IQ. Knocked out Kurt Holba in his last fight with that uppercut. Like, that's just stuff that doesn't generally happen. Barcelos Styles and Chris Gutierrez. We called the win over Lozon. We know Chris Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez is, what's his name? I always call him Sharkbait, but let me just confirm here. Chris Gutierrez it got the win over, what's his name?
I know.
Yeah, it's World Series of Fighting. Valymyr Valiev? What's his name? Timur Valiev. He beat Timur Valiev. And we know where this guy's at. Timur Valiev, good guy. Gutierrez beats him, gets the rematch, loses, fights Jared Saunders, loses, and then picks up 3 wins on the regional scene over just absolutely middling level competition. Barcelos can take this guy down and submit him. He can keep it standing and knock him out. He can beat him wherever the fight takes place. He wins this fight. I'm very confident in that. And again, he's going to be another really chalk favorite guy. So if you've got to pick between Means and Barcelos, Barcelos is the safer play, but he's also going to be the more expensive play. So give me rounding Barcelos, and not much to gain here. I think his opponent, Chris Gutierrez, is known for that one time he pulled off that one upset by split decision. I don't see it happening again. So give me the Brazilian.
So this is kind of quick little wrap up here. I think I was just making a little notes of like where we kind of stand on things as we went along here. Barcelos Means Leah Letson, you were saying. We were saying that Aguilar versus Glenn is going to be an action fight. And SHAHBAZYAN over Stewart. Those are kind of the cornerstone core pieces, I think. If we don't have DraftKings pricing yet, but those are the people that we're kind of like looking out for.
Yeah, as far as just straight finish goes, BATISTA or GREENE, there's going to be a finish there, but hard to figure out which way it's going to go. I think Juan Espino, I think he gets a finish. I think SHAHBAZYAN gets a finish. I think Leah Letson could get a finish. I think Tim Means gets a finish. I think Raoni Barcelos gets a finish. But there's probably a lot of chalk there. Your cheaper plays, we've already talked about on the show, but maybe a Macy CHAISSON. You get the right price on her, and she could get the finish, or she could bop up panty standing. If the price is right, then that'll be how you fill it to lineup.
Thank you, Cody Saftic.
Well, we're doing another episode right now, Paul, so get comfortable, buddy.
We are. The people don't know that, though.
They do now.
Thank you, Cody Saftic, breaking down the fights with me as always. Thank you to Chad Dow for doing all of his hard work behind the scenes, the things that you guys don't see coming in here early in the morning and yada, yada, yada. We appreciate everything that Chad does as well. For both of those guys, I am Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Mayo experience! Experience!